And Claire happens to be a new board member of the coalition. Let's give her another applause. Schneider. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Now, I'm looking around here. Am I missing any other elected officials in this room? Any other elected officials I'm missing? Okay. Also, I want to thank our board of directors. Most of them are here tonight. So with our board of directors, could you please stand up, or if you're standing up, just wave your hand. Please stand up, board of directors. We got 15 of you here. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your help and your service. Okay, I want to, with the questions, we have preset questions. We have 7 questioners tonight. I'm going to introduce the 7 just real quick. But also I want to remind our questioners, you have up to 2 minutes. So if you take longer than 2 minutes, you go in trouble. Okay, so please, less than 2 minutes. It's a bad place right now. Okay, our first questioner, Mary Campus. Mary, just wave your hand, Mary. Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Lucita Donna Thompson, our treasurer. Thank you, Lucita. Also, Mark Rocha. Mark Rocha, another board member. Raise your hand. Mitch Henry, right here. Okay, then we have Senator Claire Selsey again. Thank you for coming. And we have Amanda Levine, which is in the corner over here. Oh, there you are, Amanda. Good to see you. Then we have Sam here, Sam Kuhn, Bold, Iowa. Thank you for coming, Sam. Okay, just a couple other things. If you have a phone on you, a cell phone, a smartphone, whatever you want to call it, please mute it now or turn it off. Also, I'm going to introduce a special person, Big Al Womble. Al, where are you? Are you right here, Al? There you. Al's got a couple announcements, so Al, come on up. Your turn.
Thank you very much, Mitch. You know, I've always said that I absolutely love coming to Asian and Latino Coalition events because for me, it's a lot like coming home to a family reunion. So to all my family members out there in the Asian Latino Coalition, I just want to say thank you for coming out tonight on this hot night. First off, one of the things that thank you, Claire. She is also one of the people you can personally blame for me actually becoming a Democratic activist. So when somebody asks, it's all her fault. But one of the things I am very excited to announce is that, you know, for me, being the son of a single mother, being the father of 3 girls, and having a tremendous example in this room in the personage of Mary Campos, I am always very aware of women's rights and women's issues. And so is our tremendous candidate, Andrew Yang. And that's why the YangGang is combining with Emerge Iowa in order to put on a women's network and gathering event on Saturday, July 20th at 2 o'clock at the Glass Box, which is not a literal glass box, mind you. It is on 220 Southeast 6th Street here in Des Moines, Iowa, where we are going to have special speakers, not only from Emerge Iowa, talking about their program, which helps women become involved in politics and leaders in their community. But also, I would like to announce that it's going to be one of the 4 people in this life that I actually fear. One being my mom, one being my wife Sarah, the other being Mary Campos, and also we are going to have their professional MMA fighter, Leslie Smith, is flying in from California to talk to us about her challenges in becoming a professional female fighter in the MMA world, and also about things that concern her. So how about that, guys? So that is something that we're looking forward to. We hope you all show up. It's going to be a great event. We hope that you support this women's event. Like many of us here, I think all of us can say we do care about women's issues in this state. Next, I'd like to introduce finally a very good friend of mine. And it's always difficult for me to introduce this young man because not only is he far better looking than I could ever be, he also has far better hair than I have ever had in my life. But I must say that I missed him this past week because normally normally when he and his daughter come to watch sporting events with me, my team wins. You know, we went to go see the Drake Bulldogs together with him and his beautiful daughter. They won. We went to go see the Iowa Wild together, and they won. I asked him to go see the I-Cubs last night. He didn't show up, and they lost 10-3. It's your fault, Prakash. So, ladies and gentlemen, one of the best friends I have in the world, Prakash. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a fabulous introduction. Work sometimes takes priority. So, yeah, thank you, Al. Thanks for all the work you do, both part of the campaign and also the community, for the community and the causes we believe in. Thank you. Welcome everyone to the 2020 Conversations by Asian and Latino Coalition. Our today's presidential candidate is Andrew Yang, entrepreneur, whom Lucida Dana Thompson will be introducing shortly. First, I would like to welcome everyone to the coalition. I see a lot of new faces and new friends in the audience. For their sake, I'll just briefly mention about the coalition. Coalition is formed in 2015, December, for the first time. It is founded by Sam Bakam, Mitch Henry, and a few friends, Dana Thompson and Sanjita Pradhan. A few friends came together and felt there is a requirement of a platform where regular folks can meet and provide the solutions, not only discuss solutions but actually implement them. The platform where regular mom and pop and citizens can think about running for office and make their dream come true. And we provide a platform over past 3 years just for that. And especially Asian and Latino communities do not participate actively in the mainstream politics because there is no such a casual platform where you can go and discuss and be inspired and talk to several fellow Democrats. So over the last 3 years, several candidates have ran for office. They won. They're participating in various ways and definitely fighting for the coalition causes and also the Democrat causes more importantly. I would like to briefly touch about the ongoing conversation of today and why coalition is so important. We are so glad we have this coalition in Iowa. When the tweets came out and when the conversations happened last night in that rally, most of the country was totally shattered. And even in Iowa, everyone is shattered. The only strength that gave me yesterday after listening to the chants or everything is we have Asian and Latino coalition right here, supported by every Iowan, not just Asian and Latinos. And my dear friends, these coalitions are the perfect answer to no matter what the rhetoric can be, what the tweet can be, what those pictures that come out in the social media, nothing matters. Those are all there for entertainment. But in reality, no one has to worry about their citizenship status or anything as long as you have the right way of doing things and right way of participating. Coalition is going to be there, and come to the coalition, bring your friends and reinforce the American dream of achieving the greatness still exists, and it starts in Iowa and started in Iowa. We are not the first ones to do the first in nation things like caucuses. We have done several things. The Al-Qaeda, Iowa, I always say this, is named after a Muslim philanthropist, Abdul Qadir. And no other city in Iowa or in the nation is named after a Muslim. That happened in Iowa. Boron versus Board of Education has taken Iowa as an example when desegregation of schools have happened. So my dear friends, the perfect answer the president can have, and anyone in this nation that is thinking we can still have one group or one ethnicity or one race can have the entire land for themselves, coalition is the answer. It's not going to happen. It will not happen. Definitely not when coalitions are around, and definitely not with Asian and Latino coalition. We have declared that here in Iowa, and I want to make sure that everyone joins the coalition, and then we promote the coalition and their causes and the groups like this throughout the country. Thank you very much. And said that, I would like to introduce
tonight. Andrew Yang is a successful entrepreneur who is running for president on a Humanity First platform in order to beat Donald Trump. Andrew Yang was born in Upper State, New York, to parents who emigrated to the United States from Taiwan. In his book, The War on Normal People, Andrew Yang talks about how being the first generation of his family born in this country gave him a fierce love of the United States and a deep sense of what it means to struggle to fit in. As one of the only Asians in his school, Andrew Yang knows what it is like to face the slings and arrows of those who would bully others because they are different. However, as he mentioned in his book, that's why he's always taken pride in relating to the underdog or the little guy or girl. Later in his life, this sense of sticking up for the little guy inspired him to create Venture for America with the mission of revitalizing American cities and communities through entrepreneurship. His efforts helped create over 2,000 jobs in 18 cities and start dozens of companies and earned him an award from the Obama administration. It was also this same sense of looking out for the little guy that began his examination on how automation was affecting normal people. He saw that normal people, like many of us, were losing jobs due to automation and artificial intelligence. That three of the most common types of employment retail, call center workers and those who drive for a living, are having many of those jobs disappear due to advancement and automation. He saw that something needed to be done to help normal people and went to Washington, D.C. to talk to leaders about the fact that something needed to be done. But many of them were unwilling to listen or did nothing. Well, Andrew Yang decided that there is something that we can do to help normal people who are threatened with losing their livelihoods, and there is something we can do to turn the focus back on normal people. We can create a freedom dividend to give $1,000 a month to every American citizen over the age of 18. And we can switch to human-centered capitalism where people are considered more important than money. Andrew Yang also realizes, just like when he was a young man in Upper New York, those treat others inhumanly because they were different were wrong then, and they are wrong now. Edmund Burke said, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." Andrew Yang has decided that he is going to do something. He is running for president of the United States to restore hope to normal people and to restore humanity to all people. And now, ladies and gentlemen, may I present Mr. Andrew Yang.
candidates come through is because you all have the future of the country in your hands. That's why we're all here. You look around this room, how many of us are here today? Maybe 120, 130, something like that? I did the math to figure out how many Californians each Iowan is worth. You know, I came up with about 1,000. So I look around this room, I see 120,000 Californians. I think that's something like 3 football stadiums. That's what this room is. That's why we're all here. That's why you all have such an incredible historic power. I'm Andrew Yang. I'm not a career politician. As you gathered from my background, I'm an entrepreneur and problem solver. I spent the last 7 years helping run a nonprofit that I'd started that helped create a couple thousand jobs around the country. And I had a front row seat to the reason why Donald Trump won in 2016. Now, if you were to just turn on cable news, why would you think Donald Trump's our president today?
Racism?
Russia, racism,
Too much coverage by CNN.
excessive media coverage. You know, I don't know if they own up to that, but we all know that's true.
They actually do own up to it.
They do own up to it, and their response, cover him more. Facebook, the FBI, these are the things that you might hear on cable news. But if you look at the numbers, the reason why Donald Trump is our president today is that we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, and 40,000 right here in Iowa. And if you think about those 40,000 jobs in Iowa, that's 40,000 families, but think about the ripple effects from those families and communities. When I went to Olwine and other parts of this state, then you see the aftermath. You see not just those factories closed, but the shopping centers closed, the schools shrinking, the entire community retrenches. And who do those people vote for?
Republicans.
It's Republicans, by the numbers. The blue just turns bright red. That is how Donald Trump won this state by 9 points. And if you're in this room, you probably were not excited by that outcome. No. But then you're used to Iowa being purple, right down the middle, very much representative. And so when Donald Trump won by 9 points, a lot of people here in Iowa were like, what the heck just happened? And unfortunately, those 40,000 manufacturing jobs are just the beginning. You're now in the process of shedding retail jobs. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in Iowa? Yeah, you see it all around you. You've already lost 12,000 retail jobs. And that's just going to ramp up as your malls start to close. 30% of American malls are going to close in the next 4 years. And why is that?
Amazon.
Amazon. You can just look at your own habits. It's cool. I have an Amazon Prime account too. But as Amazon soaks up $20 billion in business every single year, 30% of malls and stores are closing. What's the most common job in the United States?
Retail.
Retail. Being a cashier, the average cashier is a 39-year-old woman making between $9 and $10 an hour. So when that store or mall closes, what is her next option going to be? I was talking to Phil, and he was talking about how if you look at the farms here in Iowa, they've consolidated. It used to be a family farm of a couple hundred acres. Now they've been consolidated into a couple thousand acres. And the people that used to work on those farms, instead of people, what do you have? You have machines, you have machines tending to tons of animals. Instead of having humans look after maybe a few dozen animals, you have these giant pens with the robot timers and the automated feeding and all of that. So you're seeing it happen right here in Iowa. We're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of the country. Most of the time when I'm here in Iowa, I go to Iowa 80 in Davenport, the truck stop. You guys have been to the truck stop, most all of you, right? So at Iowa 80, they have that very, very proud sign saying 5,000 people stop there every day. Most of them truck drivers. My friends in California are working on trucks that can drive themselves. Now, why are they working on those trucks? For the most American of reasons, for the money. Because the cost savings behind automating truck driving are projected to be $168 billion. Having a truck's the most common job here in Iowa and in 28 other states. There are 3.5 million truckers. How many of you all know a truck driver? Yeah, many of you might be a truck driver, so you know this directly. It's the most common job in a lot of the country. Imagine when robot trucks hit our highways and don't have to stop. So if you're a human truck driver, you have to get out after 14 hours and go to sleep. The robot truck does not. The robot truck just keeps on going, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., it doesn't matter. My friends in California tell me that we are 98% of the way there, 5 to 10 years away from robot trucks. Donald Trump is a symptom. He's a manifestation of this economic transformation. Unfortunately, our media latches onto him like he's the cause of everything that we don't like, that he's the disease. He's not. He's a symptom, and the disease is this pervasive financial insecurity that is being wrought by the fact that we are pushing more and more Americans to the sidelines. Malls close, when artificial intelligence can start answering phone calls. All of these things are going to make it harder and harder for people here in Iowa to get by, people in rural parts of the country to get by. And already here in Iowa, many... And you have children, some of them are looking up and saying, is this where I'm going to be able to find the opportunities for my career? Is this where I'm going to be able to build a career, build a life? And some of them are looking to other places. And in the United States of America, it should never be the case that you have to move away from home to have the sort of life that you want. Am I right?
Yeah.
So this is all what drove me to run for president. I had a front row seat to this incredible transformation in our economy, and no one in Washington, D.C. wanted anything to do with it. When's the last time you've heard a politician say the words fourth industrial revolution? Probably just now, right? And I'm barely a politician. So these are the true challenges of the 21st century. It is not immigrants that are causing these problems. It is technology and an evolving economy. And unfortunately, immigrants are being scapegoated for all of these other things they have nothing to do with. I'm the son of immigrants myself. I know that immigrants make our country stronger and more dynamic. My father immigrated to this country as a graduate student and generated 69 U.S. patents for GE and IBM, two great American companies. And I have a feeling that the U.S. feels like they made out pretty well. I'm getting like, I asked my dad at one point when I was old enough to figure out what the heck he did for a living. So when I was this nerdy Asian kid, I thought everyone's dad had a PhD. I would go around asking other kids, what's your dad's PhD? And then of course I found out that that was not the case. Someone, gave me a knuckle sandwich, and I was like, what's wrong? It was an innocent question. And it gives you an insight into my childhood. All right. So then, when I was a little bit older than that, I'd ask my dad, how much money do you get when you generate a patent? And then my dad was like, $200. And I was like, that doesn't seem like an awful lot. And then he looked at me and he said, I'll never forget this, he said, but they also give me a paycheck so I can put a roof over your head. I said, oh, okay, I get it. So I know for sure that immigrants make our country stronger and more dynamic, more innovative, and unfortunately immigrants are being thrown under the bus for economic changes that they have nothing to do with. So this is the center of my campaign, and if you're here tonight, you've heard something like this. There's an Asian man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. Heard something like that? Yeah. And all those things are true. And if you look at it at first blush, you think, wow, that sounds literally too good to be true. It's fantastic. But this idea has been with us since the founding of the country. Thomas Paine was for it, called it the citizen's dividend. Martin Luther King championed it and fought for it in the 1960s. He was fighting for it in 1968, the day he was assassinated. Milton Friedman and 1,000 economists signed a study saying this would be tremendous for all of America. It passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice in 1971, and one state has had a dividend in place for almost 40 years where everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that?
Alaska.
And how do they fund it?
Oil.
And what is the oil of the 21st century?
Technology.
Technology, that's right. What they are doing for the people of Alaska with oil money, we can do for everyone here in Iowa and everyone around the country with technology money. We can build a trickle-up economy from our people, our families, and our communities up. And that is the vision that we need to take to the rest of the country as fast as possible. Now, right now, if you turn on the news, you're seeing something about how great our economy is. And what are the numbers they throw at you when you see those talking heads doing their thing on businesses? GDP, headline unemployment, maybe stock market prices. And those three numbers are bunk. So GDP, record highs. You know what else is at record highs right now? Depression, stress, anxiety, suicides, drug overdoses, all at record highs. It's gotten so bad that our life expectancy has declined for the last 3 years in a row. Almost unheard of in a developed country. Not normal at all. Do you know the last time America's life expectancy declined for 3 straight years? The Spanish flu of 1918. You have to go back 100 years. So I'm going to ask you all, what good is record high GDP if your people are dying earlier? Obviously it's no good, and if you have self-driving cars and trucks, that's going to be great for GDP. The economists will be there doing their little claps, being like, ooh, this is wonderful, while more and more Americans are going to get pushed to the side. So we have to evolve to a 21st century economy as fast as possible. Even the inventor of GDP 100 years ago said 3 things. He said, number 1, it is a terrible measurement for national well-being, and we should never use it as that. Number 2, we should include parenthood in the number because it's so important. And number 3, we should not include military defense spending because it adds no economic value. So of course we ignored all 3 of those things. And now we're chasing GDP off a cliff, even as our communities are falling apart. So as president, I will update GDP to measurements that would matter to you, that would matter to us. So what would get you excited if I were to say this got better in your community or in Iowa? Because right now, how many of you got excited about GDP when you woke up this morning? You're like, yeah, it's up. I knew I could do it. Like, of course not. I know. So what actually would get you excited if I were to say this got better?
Healthcare.
Health and life expectancy. If I said, hey, Iowans are healthier and living longer, you'd be like, that's great. That means we're doing well.
Happiness index.
Mental health and freedom from substance abuse. If I said you're happier, more content, have fewer mental health problems, I would be like, wow, that's tremendous. We're actually getting better.
Education and debt relief.
Affordability and childhood success rates. And I have 2 kids myself. I don't want to know what the heck college is going to cost by the time they get to college age. But if you get me in the White House, I'm going to slow that thing down out of my own self-interest, if nothing else. How about how clean our air and water are?
Yeah.
You can actually make that a measurement of economic progress. As someone who's run organizations, run companies, if you have the wrong measuring sticks, you are doomed, right? It's like you're just going to chase the wrong measurements, the wrong direction. You have to get the right measurements. And as your president, every year I will update you on how we are actually doing at the State of the Union. I will be the first president to use a PowerPoint deck every year at the State of the Union. These are the facts on the ground that we can actually start orienting our economy and our society towards improving, things that would matter to us. It would change everything. We'd stop chasing this capital efficiency machine, because if we don't evolve, we are sunk. We will never be able to outrace all of the new technologies and artificial intelligence and robots that are coming online. If we find ourselves in a race for capital efficiency, we cannot win. We have to turn it into a race for our own well-being and improvement, a race for humanity's development. Now, I'd like to talk about my wife who's at home right now with our 2 young boys. She just sent me a picture, the 3-year-old's at his first martial arts lesson. We're starting him young in the Yang household. So, my wife's at home with our 2 boys, one of whom has autism. What is her work included in our economic measurements?
0.
0. What does GDP think her work is worth?
Nothing.
0. And we know that's the opposite of the truth. We know that her work is among the most challenging and important that is being done in our country today. Certainly more valuable than the work done by the average hedge fund manager. And we also know that it is women that are doing the vast majority of the unrecognized and undercompensated work in our homes and communities every day. And so the Democratic Party talks about empowering women. $1,000 a month would help women improve their situations more directly than anything else that we could do. And I'm talking about the waitress that has an abusive boss at a diner but can't quit her job because she needs the money to be able to keep a roof over her head. I'm talking about the single mom who's in an abusive relationship in an apartment that she can't leave. We can either talk about empowering women or we can do something about it, and I say that we do something about it. I don't know if you guys saw this. I was on The View this past week, and how many of you saw The View? So I was there and I was talking talking to Joy, and obviously everyone knows dividend, give everyone $1,000 a month. She was like, $1,000 a month, what's that going to do? And then I started talking about what it would mean for women, and then she was like, you know, you're going to give it to moms for raising kids? That's a great idea. And then I was like, did you think I wasn't going to give this to women? Like, I'm on The View for crying out loud. Like, what kind of insane person would be like, go on The View to talk about this dividend I have just for men? Like, so a lot of it is about translating to people what it would mean in real life. You know, as soon as you would think about it, so in the abstract you're like, oh, $1,000 a month, like, that's interesting. But then you think about what it would mean for our families, for our children. Be able to look your son or daughter in the eye and say, when you are an 18-year-old, you will get $1,000 a month because your country loves you, your country values you, and you're an American. That would be a game changer for every parent in this country, and we can make it real like that. There is nothing stopping the majority of citizens in a democracy from voting ourselves a dividend. Nothing at all. It just takes enough of us getting together saying this is where we want the country to go. That is the magic of this place here in Iowa. If enough Iowans, again I did the math, we need approximately, you know, something like 40,000 Iowans to embrace this vision of a human-centered economy, and then we will take this vision and sweep the whole country with it. That is the magic of this place. The rest of the country looks up at our democracy and despairs. They look up and see pipes that are just clogged full of money, and they say, my vote does not matter. And they are generally correct. Their vote generally does not matter because our government has been overrun by money. And the magic of Iowa is that you are one of the only places in this country where our democracy actually functions the way that it's supposed to. You are one of the only places in the country that if enough of you get together and vote in a direction, then that tips this domino that then causes this cascade that goes around the country. That is the magic of this place. That's why I'm here. That's why the other candidates will be here. That's why you're so, a little bit spoiled by this. But that's why the world media will converge in Iowa over the weeks and months to come to figure out what the heck you think, who are you going to support, because they know the power you have. It doesn't always feel that way to you all, particularly if you're in democratic politics and activism here. You're like, what the heck, I'm just grinding and like working hard. I have no idea if it's working, don't know if you're making progress. And in recent months and years, it's felt like you're actually trending the wrong direction. It's a terrible feeling, I know. But you should know that you still have this power to take a vision and send it around the rest of the country like wildfire. The media right now, and I've now had enough experience with the media is waiting for you all to tell it what to do. It's the most fascinating thing. You see the reporters, they're all just going around you all being like, what are you going to do? What are you going to think? Which way are you going to go? Which way is the country going to go? It's an incredible and awesome power and responsibility you have, but you deserve it. You do. You deserve it. You have the character and the interest of the country at heart, and it's a joy to be here with you all. So I am getting revved up for this debate next week. Very, very exciting. Is it next week? 2 weeks? It's like the 30th, 31st. What is that, like a week and a half? Oh, it's 2 weeks. Almost exactly 2 weeks. As we're all here together, CNN's actually doing the drawing to see what night we'll be at, all the rest of it. And Detroit has a special place in my heart, a little bit like Iowa, because I spent time every year for the last 9 years in Detroit. I've seen that city hit its low point. I've seen it come back a little bit. And Detroit, to me, is an emblem of what is going on in the rest of the country. I'm so thrilled to be back there and make this case to the American people. And the case is this. Donald Trump's our president today because he got many of the essential problems right. What did he say? He said, look, a lot of Americans are struggling, a lot of Americans are being left behind. What was the Democratic response in 2016?
You're racist.
Well, he said, make America great again. And the Democratic response was, America is already great. Remember that?
Yeah.
That did not work so well.
Send him home. Send him home.
Oh, we're going to send that guy home, all right. We're going to send him to the golden toilet in the sky. So his message to America was, here are the problems, but unfortunately his solutions were garbage and nonsense. What were his solutions? Build a wall, turn back the clock, Bring the old jobs back. We have to do the opposite of all these things. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our society and economy as fast as possible. We have to evolve in the way we think about work and our own value in the 21st century. And I am the man for that job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Thank you very much, Des Moines. Thank you. You guys are the best. Love you all. Love the YangGang. Brownie points in particular. Always like you're undercover, because every time I saw one, it gave me a little thrill.
Hey Andrew, welcome. My name is Amanda, and I'll be helping answer questions. And we are Facebook Live. We have 500 people watching right now. Okay, our first question comes from Mary Campos, and it's on immigration.
Good evening, Mr. Yang. I want to say thank you for being here with us, and also you're very well aware of the immigration problem. I'm going to ask two parts of that. My first is my very biggest concern, the future of my DACA and my dreamers. Because Obama put something in place, but I'm not too sure that we can rely on anything else from Mr. Trump. And the other thing is that I was asking about my DACA and my dreamers. That we had some I was born in a healthcare home. I came to Des Moines when I was 6 years old. My parents have been migrant workers, field workers, mine workers. We've never taken anything from anybody except the pride that we have in doing our job. And if we're bilingual, that's an advantage. That's a richness that everyone in this room, everyone in this room, does not belittle yourself until you speak your native tongue. Hold your head up high and speak your tongue, because this is our country. And I've always said, we don't need him to tell us that we made America great. We are great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And let's give Mary a round of applause for the incredible work she's done. I had a chance to meet Mary a number of months ago, and I was honored then. Again, I'm the son of immigrants myself, and I am the opposite of Donald Trump on many, many fronts. He wants to build a wall. I want to give immigrants a hug and let them know that if you come to this country, your son or daughter can become president of the United States. Woo! I think most everyone here in this room that we need to protect the dreamers. They've known no other life but the United States of America. They're American in just about every respect except for a particular legal classification. And so I would go back to the Obama era doctrine of just saying, look, we need to protect the dreamers and protect their rights at every level. And I'm disgusted and horrified at Donald Trump's doubling and tripling down on this entire go back to where you came from, because as someone who grew up Asian American in this country, I was told to go back to where I came from many, many times as a young person, as a kid, as a teenager. And when I was young, it hurt. When I was young, it was confusing. As I got older, now it just seems ridiculous and absurd to me, and I'm happy to say it seems ridiculous and absurd to just about all Americans where Donald Trump is trying to lead us right now. So I'm going to be very privileged and honored to help protect the dreamers and make sure that people know that you, me, and people in this room, we are just as American as everybody else.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Luisita Donna Thompson on veteran healthcare.
There are over 9 million people, veterans and their families, that access the VA's healthcare program, as of the latest statistics. Most veterans prefer going to a VA hospital because doctors in those hospitals are more apt to understand what the veteran is wanting, asking, or saying. As we continue destigmatizing mental health and PTSD for our troops, we now talk about privatizing VA healthcare. Costs are shown to be over $100 billion per year as privatization continues to grow and runs the risk of losing ground on the mental health battle that has been going on for years now. Without reverting back to 2014 levels of healthcare, what steps would you take as president to ensure our veterans receive the care they need from the doctors and nurses that understand them in a timely manner?
That's a tremendous question. How many veterans are in the room, or families of veterans? Well, thank you all for your service. We owe you a great deal. And the VA and providing adequate health care and mental health support is part of that obligation that we owe our vets. I certainly think privatizing the VA is the exact opposite of what you'd want to do. And there's this myth around healthcare in particular that somehow the private sector is more efficient. In healthcare, it's actually the opposite. Where right now in private healthcare, it's the worst of all worlds, where we spend twice as much to worse results. It's one reason why veterans prefer the VA as it currently is. Because as soon as you enter the private system now, unfortunately, the incentives change. And the incentives in the private healthcare system are around generating revenue, and there's this massive insurance bureaucracy. One of the most perverse things about healthcare in the United States is that you get more stressed out about trying to navigate the system and paying your bills than you do actually getting well. And that's something that Americans at this point just sort of say, well, I guess that's just the way it has to be, but it does not have to be that way. And certainly where veterans are concerned, I would redouble our investment in the VA, and in particular, I would put a lot to work on trying to support mental health initiatives. There is so much, we have a mental health crisis not just among veterans, but among Americans in general. And we have to destigmatize that. People have to know that it's all right to seek help, but then also they need the resources so when they reach out for help, the resources are actually there for them. There's a massive shortage of mental health professionals in this country. There's a massive shortage of mental health resources available to veterans in particular, and we can do so much more. I've been talking to a guy named Richard Ogen. How many of you guys know Richard? Yeah. Richard Ogen has been advising us on Veterans Affairs, and we can do so much more. My brother is actually a psychology professor, and so he talks about the shortage of mental health resources that are available, but I think certainly privatizing the VA is the exact opposite of what you'd want to do. If anything, you'd want to take the principles of public health care and expand them to much of the private sector.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Our next question comes from Mark Rocha on labor.
Hey, welcome back to Des Moines. My question, I wear several hats. Coalition.
You're in front of the speaker.
I'm also.
Mark, gotta move forward, buddy.
Part of the coalition here, and
Closer.
with MULAC, and also I'm member of CWA, the Community Workers of America here in Des Moines. My question on labor is we've been getting beat up on labor for years, especially in Des Moines. Public sector, 2017, they knocked us out. I'm in the private sector, but I'd be crazy to think they're not going to come after me. So, and the National Labor Board is against this administration is against this. In your administration, what would you do to make a hard check, union people to organize and form a union?
Thank you, Mark.
No, this is going to sound like a non sequitur, but it's actually directly tied. So there's a woman named Leslie Smith who's coming to Des Moines tomorrow to have a mixed martial arts session. She's a friend of mine, and the reason why she's a friend is that she was fired for trying to unionize mixed martial arts fighters at the professional level. So my idea for the freedom dividend was not my idea. It was championed by a guy named Andy Stern who used to run the SEIU. Do you guys know who Andy Stern is? So he was a labor union leader who said the future of labor is no labor unless we do something big, and so we need to move towards a dividend. And this dividend would end up empowering workers to be able to negotiate much harder, because it would make you much harder to push around and exploit. So right now, if you're a union and you're negotiating against management or even considering striking, management knows that if push comes to shove, your members are going to have a hard time paying their bills because 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, 47% can't afford an unexpected $400 bill. So they know you can't really go on strike for very long because your members will end up revolting very, very quickly. So what Andy said is if you put this dividend in everyone's hands, this $1,000 a month, is not a lot of money, but it's enough to scrape by for a particular period. what Andy said is this becomes a built-in strike fund for every worker. And it makes it so that if you're really getting exploited by your boss, you can say, I don't need this, and then you can actually go home and figure things out without worrying about surviving. So this is the kind of game changer that labor needs, because labor has been losing for decades at an epic scale. Union membership has been cut just about in half, and you've lost not just at the state level, but the federal level. So when I go to unions, I say, look, you need to transform the rules of the game. And the best way to transform the rules of the game is to get this $1,000 dividend into everyone's hands, which will all of a sudden supercharge unions and workers, because then if management came and wanted to stick it to you, they know that if it gets too contentious, then you go on strike, that your workers can actually survive for days, weeks, months. And then that changes the tenor of all the negotiations. But this is the game changer you need, because labor, despite the fact that labor's been when I was here in Iowa, I knew you guys so much. Someone at the UAW had me watch a documentary on a guy named Walter Reuther, who was one of the founding fathers of the UAW. And watching what he went through to fight for workers' rights, staggering. Shot in his own home, his brother was shot, he was beaten. Like all this stuff happened when he was fighting for workers' rights. It made you realize just what the hell that people had to go through in the formation of unions. And then in this generation, unions are just getting undercut and kneecapped at every turn. And what we're up against is this giant machine of capital efficiency. And we have to change the rules to advantage ourselves as fast as possible, because this machine has a mind of its own. And one of the things that is going wrong in this country is that we think that it's like an us against them. I'm here to tell you that this machine has like transcended any of the humans that you would think are supposedly quote unquote in charge of it. You can go to some very, very rich and powerful CEO and you think that guy's calling the shots. It's generally a guy. That guy's calling the shots. That guy's hands are tied. That guy has to make certain decisions all the time, or else he will be fired, because he has to obey the rules of capital efficiency. That's what we have to change. And even the people who theoretically are at the top of the machine, actually the machine's out of control. The machine's run amok. It's going to run over, certainly, workers. We have to get up in there, climb into that thing's computer brain, and rewire the rules of the economy as fast as possible. And that includes being it so that labor actually can have its day in the sun and not continue to get pushed aside.
Oh,
And you know if you want to upgrade the operating system, you know who you call.
You're on the 31st, by the way.
I'm
The
sorry?
second night. You're on the second night.
I'm on the second night, thank you for that.
Inslee, Gillibrand, Gabbard, Bennett, DeBazio, Booker, and Castro. They haven't put
Next
the
to
top
Joe
four
Biden.
on yet.
Thanks to Joe Biden.
They haven't put it on yet.
all right. Our next question comes from Senator Claire Celsey on public education.
Hello, Mr. Yang. Thanks for being here today. Many state governments have, not Iowa, have decided to use public taxpayer dollars to fund online schools, vouchers for private schools, and charter schools that have a very high failure rate. Not a day goes by without a charter school failure that leaves students, teachers, and parents scrambling mid-year to find a new school. Will you commit to restoring integrity to the Department of Education by appointing a real public education advocate to head the department, and also commit to preserving public taxpayer dollars for public schools?
So I'm happy to say that whoever I appoint to the Department of Education is going to actually believe in public education. I've got 2 young children myself. The younger is starting public school in the fall. And so this is near and dear to my heart. We need to give our kids a better chance to learn, and our teachers a better chance to educate. Now, when I looked at what happens with educational outcomes, here's the staggering finding that's actually, and you know this as an educator, where 2/3 of kids' academic performance and outcomes are actually determined by things outside of the school. So what is that? That's parental time, words read to the child, parental income, stress levels in the house, type of neighborhood. These things determine 2/3 of the kids' academic performance. And teachers know this. Teachers know that we're holding them 100% accountable for something that they have about 35% control over. So the first thing we have to do is we have to pay teachers more. The studies have shown that a good teacher is worth his or her weight in gold. And one of the things we have to transform is that right now, teachers are arguing as if there are costs, and we have to say teachers are the best investment you can make. Because if a teacher improves the performance of 25 kids, that over a lifetime is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So if anything, teachers are due a raise. So we pay teachers more, we de-emphasize tests so that teachers can do their jobs in the classroom. And then we put more resources in the hands of the parents and families so that kids have a better chance to actually learn, and our teachers have a chance to actually teach when the kids show up every day. In public schools, the vast majority of schools in this country are public schools, and my kids in public schools. I'm pro excellent school in any form, and so there are many charter schools that are not doing very well. There are some charter schools that have very good results. There are public schools that are in the same boat. We need to try and improve every school and give every kid a real shot at learning, and also every teacher a chance to do their job.
And do you believe public money should go to charter schools, online schools, and vouchers? That's my question.
I'm a big fan of public schools. I'm not a big fan of online schools in particular. Can you imagine if online schools cost the same as in-person schools, would we be as attracted to them? No, it's like a lot of it, people are just trying to reduce costs. And so I'm a much bigger fan of kids showing up and learning. We're wired to learn from each other.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Mitch Henry on voting rights.
By the way, you got Biden and Harris.
Best friends from
With voting rights. I'm a proud member of LULAC. LULAC has put 2 lawsuits in effect against the state of Iowa in the last year here. We have proud members, Mark Rocha, Mary Campus, and others in this room. We're fighting the state of Iowa on the voting rights law that was passed over the last 2 years. There's also been most states, over 30 states over the last 6 years or so, have also passed voter ID bills. And what's your position on these voter ID bills? To us, it suppresses a vote, especially in the Latino community, the Asian community, the African American community, the disability community, many other communities. So it's a big issue to us. So just listen to your position on voting rights.
To me, those voter ID laws are solutions in search of a problem. It's like a fake problem. Where right now we have to make it easier, not harder, to vote in just about every context. And unfortunately, there's one political party that thinks by making it harder to vote, that will help them. So I'm not just against these voter ID laws that make it more onerous, but I want to try and register people automatically and link it to the DMV where, hey, if you get a driver's license, we might as well just register you to vote. I would want to make it easier for people to actually go and vote on election day by making election day a holiday. So instead of people having to choose between going to work and paying their bills and then being able to vote. If we're a democracy, you're telling me we can't give people the day off to vote on the most important day of the year for our democracy, or sometimes every 2 or 4 years? And over time, one of the things that we have to try and move towards, and it's not game ready yet, but we all know we can pay our speeding tickets online, we can do most of our banking online, we can pay most of our bills online. The technology is not ready, but we have to move as fast as we can to secure voting online. Because if you had the ability to vote online, that would actually open up our democracy in very dramatic ways. It would improve election participation quite dramatically. We have to do everything we can to actually empower our democracy to work. I talked before about the fact that our democracy has been overrun by money. One of the big moves I want to make is giving us all 100 democracy dollars that we can then just give to any political campaign or candidate. Because as someone running for president right now, this is the dark truth of where political campaigns are right now. You have to go to certain people for their votes, and then you go to other people for the money. And unfortunately, you start listening to the money more and more because it seems somehow more powerful than the votes. But if every person had 100 democracy dollars that they could give to a campaign, then if you get 1,000 people on your side, that's $100,000. And then if the corporate lobbyist comes and says, I've got $10,000 for you, you can be like, I don't need your $10,000, I've got the people. It can actually align interest between the people and our legislators and try and wash the money out. Because we know that corporate money has a way of just creeping back in, no matter what rules you set. So the best thing to do is actually to wash it out with people-powered money. And I've done the math. If every citizen had $100, it would wash out lobbyist cash by a factor of about 8 to 1. Math's around, so the math, what does math stand for? Make America think harder. That's right. That's what we got to get America doing. Get us solving the real problems. The math has a double meaning.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know that. Our next question comes from Lana Bakam on human trafficking.
Human trafficking impacts women and girls of color, particularly Asian and Latino women. Do you have any ideas or policies that you would implement to curb the trafficking of immigrants and women of color?
Thank you for the question. It's something that's very important to not just members of our community, but we all know that the amount that gets reported on is just a very, very small fraction of the truth of what's going on. It's similar to I, like everyone else in this room, know someone who's been a victim of sexual assault, and that also gets underreported just in the same way as human trafficking, where it's like this secret that everyone knows is there, but we don't pay enough attention to it. In terms of policies, we have to try and create an enforcement mechanism where if someone has any idea that trafficking is going on, that we actually have specific law enforcement that's dedicated to that particular problem. Because right now, our law enforcement agency is regarded as, frankly, a little bit lower on the list of priorities, and that's something we can change. So as president, I would have a trafficking task force that's centered on this specific set of issues, because I feel very strongly that this is something that we're not doing enough to fight.
Thank you, Ms. Yang. Our last question comes from Sam, and it's going to be about climate change.
Hi, Mr. Yang. My name's Samantha Kuhn. I'm with Bold, Iowa. I admire your plan for freedom dividend. Obviously, this is your number one priority. When you get into the Oval Office, you're just going to hit the ground running on this. My concern is how quickly will you work on climate? You say it's existential threat priority number one, but there's also the question of political capital. You want the freedom dividend to go through and make people's lives better, but people will also end up dying from the climate if you don't start moving quickly. How are you planning to balance? How much of a priority is climate, and how are you going to balance trying to get these two things done without burning out your political capital within, like that? The way Obama and ACA had it.
That's a tremendous question. How many of you all are concerned about climate change? Everyone in the room. I am too. It is an existential threat to our way of life. The last 4 years have been the 4 warmest years in recorded history. So it doesn't take a scientist to say that climate change is now accelerating and taking on. Now, I think we need to fight it on every level. I would rejoin the Paris Accords. I would implement a carbon fee and dividend. I would invest in a much more renewable and sustainable infrastructure. But one thing I'm going to try and suggest is that this problem is more linked to financial insecurity than most people believe. Because right now, if 78% of us are living paycheck to paycheck and almost half can't afford an unexpected $400 bill, and you go to someone and say, we need to fight climate change, a lot of them will just have their head down. They'll just say, I can't worry about the problems of tomorrow if I can't pay my bills today. That's just where a lot of Americans are. This country's been swept by a mindset of scarcity that has reduced our ability to solve the big problems. So if you get the economic boot off of people's throat, if you put $1,000 a month into people's hands and then they have their heads up, and then you come back literally the next day and say, we need to fight climate change, you may get a different answer the next day after they know that their future is assured, that their bills are going to be paid for, that their kids will actually have a future. Because if you have your head down just looking at your feet trying to pay your bills, it's very, very hard to activate energy around climate change. So this is a way for us to speed up on climate change. And if you look at the things we can control our capital flows to our people very, very powerfully and easily. That's literally just a communal decision. If we say, let's put $1,000 a month in everyone's hands, that can happen very, very quickly. And then that changes the mindset. We can transform the way Americans think about climate change very, very quickly if everyone now has a sense of abundance and of the future and of optimism. And then we can go much bigger towards renewable energy sources. We can make moves when people don't feel like if we head in that direction, we're going to be taking things away from them and making their way of life more difficult and more expensive. So I'm with you, I'm 100% committed on addressing climate change. I just think that the first step is getting this boot off of people's throats so they can think clearly. Because the studies have shown that if you can't pay your bills, it has the functional effect of decreasing your IQ by 13 points, or 1 standard deviation. So if you think that there's a sense that the United States of America is getting dumber, less reasonable, less rational, less optimistic, we probably are, because we can't pay our bills. If you get the cloud out of everyone's heads, I think you'll see that our attitude around climate change can speed up very, very quickly. So I'm with you that it's an existential threat. I'm with you on trying to address it from day one. I just think that the intermediate step of addressing financial security actually helps. It doesn't hurt. It's not like a use of political capital. It actually ends up generating political capital. And here's what I mean by this. So with your help, let's imagine this. I'm in the White House in 2021. Thank you, Iowa. Thank you. Democrats and progressives will be so excited that we've beaten Donald Trump. They'll be like, yeah, we did it. We took a chance. We bet on the right candidate, and now we've won. And we know he's in the Oval Office because he wants to get people money. And then the Republicans and conservatives will look up and say, wait a minute, this dividend's a huge win for people in rural areas, for red states in the interior, for places that have been blasted by automation. And we don't need 81% of Congress, we just need 51% to get the dividend through. And can you imagine someone here in Iowa standing in the way of people in Iowa and the dividend? Like, you know, they'll be like, I don't think the dividend's very good. You know, are you kidding me? Like, can you imagine that person's office or their phone lines? You know, I mean, cash is very hard to demonize. If you go and say, hey, we're going to change your health care, people will be like, oh, it's going to hurt you. Like, you're going to take your health care away. This one will be like, hey, the Asian man wants to give you money. It's going to be really harmful to you somehow. They'll be like, really, how? You know, it'll be like very confusing. So after you get that done, then the American people will actually look up and say, like, wow, we did it. We did something really positive and productive. I really like this. I haven't had this feeling in quite some time. And then you actually end up generating momentum to start solving other problems that people can agree on. You say, well, now that we got this dividend in people's hands, what else can we get done? Maybe we should work on the infrastructure, make it modern and more sustainable. And historically, that's been a bipartisan cause. You know, and then we move towards climate change that most Americans agree on. It's a huge problem in both parties. So we can make moves more quickly after we get the boot off of people's throats.
Thank you, Andrew, for your excellent speech, opening, and also answering all the questions. Thanks to the questioners for asking the questions. Now, for closing remarks.
Well, thank you. First, I want to thank the Asian Latino Coalition for getting us all together tonight. Thank you. I have many friends in this room. It's tremendous to be here. You all represent the optimism and forward-thinking people here in Iowa that will help really form the future of this country over the next number of years. It's a joy to be here with you, and the candidate to beat Donald Trump in 2020 is going to have to appeal to people at every part of the political spectrum. And I'm happy to say that our campaign in particular has managed to ignite excitement among all sorts of people, including people that have not traditionally been excited about politics, 25% of Americans call themselves politically disengaged. And when I have an event or rally, I know this one, what's your name is? Your eyes widened. You were like, what? I mean, not everyone is like you all here in Iowa, where politics is like one of the central activities in people's minds. 25% of Americans say they essentially don't care about politics. But when I have an event or rally, I love to ask this question. I say, how many of you are attending a political event for the first time in your life? And typically when I ask that question, in a room not like this one, because you all are very political, but at a rally or a room like this, more than half of the group raises their hand. This campaign is exciting Americans at every point in the political spectrum. We're getting not just Democrats and progressives like many of you here in the room, but we're getting disaffected Trump voters, conservatives, independents, and libertarians. Libertarians love the freedom dividend. It's like named after them. Try it out on one of your libertarian friends. Say, hey, what do you think about Andrew Yang and the freedom dividend? You'll see, their face will light up. Because it's not left, it's not right, it's forward. And that's where we're going to take the country in 2020. Thank you all so much. Thank you all.